Hello, my name is Zain, and this is my partner Mohanam, and we're going to be analyzing PEST, SWAT, and Porter's 5 forces for RBC moving into Mauritius. We're talking about the PEST analysis for RBC moving into Mauritius. So, I'll start off with the political aspect. So, with regards to political intervention, many interesting factors should be considered when pondering whether or not to enter Mauritius's banking system. Mauritius is a small but powerful island off the coast of Africa. It employs a parliamentary democracy, which is similar to our system, but the only difference is that a head of state is a different person from the head of government. What this political system means for us is that it would be quite easy for RBC to set up shop in Mauritius, as any laws or regulations that would need to be amended can be passed easily and quickly. Parliamentary systems, including parliamentary democracy, generally quicken legislative action because the executive branch requires the support of the legislative before it can pass legislation. One factor that could influence our decision to expand into Mauritius is that corruption has severely worsened in the area. The NGO's report in 2013 highlights that corruption in the island economy has deteriorated 52 points compared to 57 points last year. This could be a potential roadblock into moving into Mauritius, as there may be too much risk for one of our facilities getting corrupt. While corruption may be an issue, it is undoubtable that Mauritius supports foreign investment. Mauritius has a liberal economic and trade policy. The country is a member of the WTO, as well as many other regional economic groups. The objective of the trade policy of Mauritius is to transform the island into an open and globally competitive economy, and to fully integrate it into the world trade system. The island is open to international trade and does not have any trade barriers. What all this means is that RBC would be welcomed with open arms into Mauritius. Moving on to economical. Regardless of Mauritius's small size, its economy is booming. The GDP is 11.5 billion with a per capita of close to 10,000. The real interesting fact is that their GDP has been growing annually for around 3%, which indicates that investing in this country would be a good idea. The exchange rates for Mauritius have been stable, around 0.3 for every $1 for 3 years now. Despite this being a fairly low point for the exchange rate, this means that the exchange rate is dependable, and it would be safe to assume that there would be no major fluctuations. This is just another factor supporting the expansion of RBC into Mauritius. The unemployment rate in Mauritius fell to 6.6% in the fourth quarter of 2016 from 7.9% a year earlier, reaching the lowest since the last 3 months of 2009. This showcases the vast majority of the population is employed. Looking at the Mauritius's standing in the Global Competitiveness Report, we can see that they are ranked the most highly in their health and primary education pillar. This sheds light into the quality of their workforce, as they will be an educated one, and therefore a highly skilled workforce. This is good news for RBC, as we will have an experienced workforce if we choose to expand. Moving on to social. So going back to the GCR, Mauritius is ranked quite highly in their health and education pillar. Mauritius is ranked 42nd out of 140 with a score of 6.2 out of 7. This ensures that all residents receive a good quality of education, which means that majority of the population will see the benefits of having another bank in the economy. The education enrollment rate is 98.1%, which also shows how almost all of the population is educated to a degree. This is beneficial for RBC, as most of the population is educated and therefore their workforce will be educated as well. Moving on to technology. This may be the biggest drawback into entering Mauritius. With regards to the GCR, Mauritius is ranked at 4.2 in the technological sophistication pillar. There's a myriad of different factors that influence this low score. They are ranked under 5 in technological readiness, technological adoption, and biggest of all, in firm-level technological absorption. What this means is that access to advanced technologies will not be offered in Mauritius, and in this industry it is very important. Aside from business level technological absorption, only 45% of the population have access to the internet. In an age where online banking is more prevalent than ever, this is a very troubling number. Due to these significant drawbacks, RBC should be wary about proceeding into Mauritius.
Strengths. A big strength that RBC has over other competitors is that it's a Canadian bank, meaning that it's very secure and safe. Canadian banks have the safest banks in the world based off soundness and security. This can attract many consumers as they want a branch who keep their money safe and risk-free. If the economy of Mauritius ever struggles or heavily contracts for more than 2 quarters, then RBC can hold on to their consumer savings and stay stable. Referring back to the 2008 financial crisis that affected the US market and therefore the world, Canada was one of the few banking systems where they actually held up and survived that crisis compared to the rest of the world. Therefore, Canada's banking system can attract new consumers within Mauritius. Another strength that RBC has is that Canadian tourists won't have any trouble choosing which bank to trust when landing in Mauritius, as they are already familiar with RBC as it's a Canadian bank, and so it won't be a hard choice for them. For weaknesses, RBC is not as globally popular compared to other banks such as Bank of America or Wells Fargo, as it operates only in Canada and some parts of the US. Therefore, it will be harder for RBC to attract new tourists or people who are not from Canada, as they are not familiar with the bank and would rather go to a bank that they are actually familiar with. At first, this may be difficult to start up stable revenue for the bank, as many people haven't put their full trust within RBC in like savings account and such. Although in the long run, as more and more people get used to them, RBC will start becoming a household name within the country if everything runs smoothly and further increasing profits. Onto the opportunities, RBC faces easier competition as there are only a limited number of banks in Mauritius, and a majority of them are weaker than RBC based on soundness, security, and offerings. Some of the top banks include Bank One, SBI, and Habib Bank Limited. Performing a benchmark, it was evident that RBC generated a higher revenue, better profits, and more valuable assets compared to these top-tier banks, so there should be no real problem for them to take over the financial market share and tourist revenue. Another great opportunity for RBC is that expanding to another market will help them gain more recognition within consumers and tourists, and therefore more people will know about it globally and soon put their full trust with RBC. As the bank is only operating in Canada, many people outside of the borders don't have much of an idea on how they operate or how secure they really are, and even the existence of the bank. Expanding to a new place will definitely help raise the brand recognition to people outside of Canada and will benefit the business greatly. Now, there are quite a few threats that may or may not be faced expanding to Mauritius. Firstly, a physical one is that there are some possibilities of a bank robbery. Looking into the Global Competitiveness Report, the first pillar of institutions, we could see that Mauritius is ranked quite poorly in ethics, corruption, and security. Data is collected from past experiences, and as RBC is one of the more profitable banks compared to the competition in the country, there may be a higher chance of a robbery on this bank. However, tourist destinations typically have more stable security, and as more of these branches will be located in these areas, RBC shouldn't worry too much about this threat. The other possibility is fraud, and that could occur anytime as well. Employees have too much power can cause fraud, with the opportunity is there for them. This could greatly tarnish the brand image of the company if found out by the general public, and consumers will no longer want to have some sort of business with RBC. Referring back to the competitiveness report and ethics and corruption, Mauritius ranks 47th compared to Canada at 18th, so we can see that there is a higher chance of fraud, and that this is something to really look out for. And finally, the threat of more competition expanding into Mauritius, such as CIBC or BMO banks, other Canadian banks, will give RBC a harder time to operate to their full potential.
So, moving on to Porter's 5 forces, I will be talking about the bargaining power of suppliers. Suppliers don't have very much say when it comes to power over the buyers. In this case, the supplier is RBC and the buyers are the consumers. The bank needs the consumers in order to function, so the bargaining power of the suppliers is quite low. Also, one must consider other banks in the area. So if there's a particular service that RBC is adamant on declining, the consumers could go to a different bank, which only weakens their power more. Moving on to the bargaining power of buyers, the buyers have supreme control over banks. Without the buyers, banks will have no money to control. Once again, the banks cannot suffer any defections to other banks or large depositors.
Looking into threats of new entrants, the financial industry in Mauritius is looking very tempting to enter for competitors. However, it's very hard to enter the market as there are many barriers of entry that stop these businesses from entering. Only the few are able to enter. There are high startup costs that will set back profit earnings, and the extra expenses for a startup could really hurt a business. Some customers will only prefer one brand and are loyal to that one brand, which can limit the number of new customers. Along with the brand name, if the bank is unknown to the general public, then a lot of people won't trust them. Over time, capital requirements are very high, and so in the long run, many banks will eventually struggle. There is a medium threat of substitutes in the financial industry in Mauritius, the main being other physical banks. Top tier ones within the country include One Bank, SBI, and Habib Bank Limited. This is where brand loyalty can play a serious role. Another substitute is online banking from the comfort of the consumer's own home or hotel. This is very convenient, and a lot of people have started to get involved in online banking more and more. PayPal transactions are also included in this, and as more financial services include accounting firms. However, most are not brand names. Reviewing the three analysis, we have decided that it would be beneficial for RBC to move into Mauritius, although there would be difficulties with competitors and starting off with the company within the country. But RBC is already a big enough household name, and we think in the long run the branch will leave a big impact in the tourist country of Mauritius. Thank you for listening, and we hope you learned something from our video.